So, welcome to the next installment of the Looksfluencer rating series. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be getting through all of these guys, and today we have somebody who's very popular. I think he's been in the space for about a year, and that is, of course, FaceIQ. So, we're going to be getting straight into it. Like usual, we're going to be going through his attractive features first, and then going to his flaws, which will give him an overall face score. And then we're going to be combining this with his overall stats, which is his strengths and his weaknesses. And these are all things unrelated to his face, such as his height and physique. And then we're going to be giving him an overall score. And finally, we have a little section about what type of girls he can get. And as always, we're going to be using this reference chart as the point of comparison. So beginning with his attractive features, similar to Clav, I think he also has a premium jaw. This is definitely a premium jaw, and you could probably guess that because he's got a lot of positives associated with it. He's got a good width, and he's got good definition, he's got a long ramus, he's got a straight mandible, he's got good forward growth, he's got good chin projection, and he's got a good chin width as well. So all of these features definitely make him a premium jaw. It's easy to see when you're just watching him on camera how much his jaw definitely is a prominent and masculine jaw. And a lot of people in the comments are talking about how his jaw is a mog, and it's definitely his best feature. So as a whole, 100% a premium jaw. He also has premium hair, and that's because he's got a Norwood 1 hairline, so it's clear to see he's got no visible signs of balding. He's also got a good texture and density. It's clearly luscious hair and attractive, and a lot of girls I've seen like this type of hair. He's also got upper marginal health indicators. He's got good skin, which is clear and free from wrinkles. However, I've only given him upper marginal for this because he does have a flaw, which we'll be getting into in a little while. Lastly, as for his face proportions, I also think that these are very, very strong because he's got equal facial thirds, which is when each of the widths of the face are the same, and he's got a good face to skull ratio, which is where there's a 1-to-1 ratio from the skull to the face. And if you remember from the last video, this is very, very important because if you have a larger skull compared to your face, then this can look less developed. It can look more juvenile, like an infant. Like you'll often see a lot of kids, people that haven't hit puberty yet, will have this sort of ratio, which definitely doesn't look attractive. It doesn't look like you're going to be reproductively ready. However, on the opposite side, you don't want to have too large of a face compared to your skull because this looks more like a Neanderthal. So the most optimal ratio for your skull to your face is a 1-to-1, which FaceIQ absolutely has. Now getting into his flaws, which if we compare with Clav in the last video, FaceIQ definitely has a few more of because Clav only had a couple flaws, FaceIQ's got about 9 or 10. Starting with his eyes, I think that this is his biggest issue. His eyes are probably somewhere in the marginal range or at best upper marginal. And that's because he's got 4 flaws associated with them. First and foremost, it's very obvious, he's got this negative canthal tilt, so his eyes are downward drooping. And generally when it comes to facial features, you don't want downward growth. You always want positive growth. You always want the eyes to be turned upwards. Same with the eyebrows, same with your cheekbones, same with your jaw. Like for most faces that are considered attractive, you always want a positive growth, which you see in this face and this face, where most of the features are tilted slightly upwards. You can see this positive growth, and this is important because it often shows good maxillary development, because if you have a recessed maxilla or a recessed jaw, then it often causes more downward growth. And another problem with FaceIQ's eyes is his eyelid exposure. So you can see in this image in particular, there's more eyelid exposure, and you might be wondering why it's less visible here. Well, that's because I personally think this is a bit of a Chadfish photo. Maybe he's squint maxing a little bit in this image, and it looks like he's tensing his jaw in this image more so as well, because you can see a slightly sharper angularity here compared with in this image. However, when I have seen most of his videos, he resembles more like this compared to this, so I do think this image is a little bit Chadfished, which is why I would take this photo with a bit of a grain of salt, because it's clear to see he looks better here compared with here. And one of the reasons that he frequently chooses this photo is because it does hide his flaws, such as the eyelid exposure and another flaw which I'll be getting to further down here. Another problem related to his eyes is his lack of under-eye support, and I actually think this is partially causing his negative canthal tilt, because when you've got less under-eye support, which is the bone supporting underneath, then that increases the chance that you'll have this downward growth, this negative canthal tilt, or even eye bags. So if you've got eye bags, if you've got low set cheekbones, it's often all connected, because if you have a recessed maxilla, if you have lower set cheekbones, it increases the chance that you're going to have these eye bags or negative canthal tilt. And lastly, I also think this is connected with the asymmetry of his eyes, because it's hard to see in this image here, but if we bring it in a little bit closer, you can see that this eye is slightly more negatively tilted compared to the other one. However, this is a very, very minor flaw, and to be honest, you wouldn't be able to notice this most of the time if you're talking to him in real life. And lastly, getting to the various few other flaws that he has, which are a bit disjointed. The first is that he's got slightly rounded cheeks, and this was the thing that I was talking about earlier, where you can't really see it in this image as much, but it's definitely more noticeable here. And when I've seen him on videos, I definitely do see that his cheeks are a little bit rounded. And you don't want this, because it's better to have this dovetailing look where your cheeks are looking more hollow. It's very visible in this particular model's face. Another flaw he has is his thin lips, particularly his upper lip, and this causes another issue, which is that his philtrum looks a little bit long. So because he's got this thin upper lip, it makes his philtrum, which is this little bit of skin here between the upper lip and nose, longer than it should be. Ideally, you want it to be a bit shorter, like in this model's. And he also has a slightly elongated mid-face. It's a little bit hard to see in this photo, but I would say it's slightly too long for my liking. It's better if it's a bit more compact, like what you see in this model's look. And lastly, wrapping up the flaws, I actually think this is quite a significant issue for him, and that is that his neck is too thin. And you'd be surprised just how much of an impact this makes, and his neck is clearly on the thinner side. And it definitely hurts his masculinity. And honestly, if you have seen somebody with a thin neck in real life, it does make a big difference in terms of how attractive they are perceived, especially among girls, because it just gives a lower primal reception. It looks a lot less masculine. However, it's hard to see when you're looking at photos of someone, because photos tend to overrepresent beauty and underrepresent the mogging features, which I'll get into more a little bit later. So, getting to his overall face score, combining all of these attractive features and flaws, I will give his score as barely premium. I think he's in this 7 out of 10 range. He's definitely not a strong premium. However, I think it's a little bit harsh to say that he's just in the upper marginal range. I think if I had to put him exactly on this chart, he's like right here, in between upper marginal and premium. And that's mainly as a result of these flaws that he has. So he's definitely an above average looking guy. If there's 100 people in the room, he's probably going to be in the top 5, just barely, which is why I'm giving him the score. I don't think he's as attractive as Clav, who I rated a strong premium in the last video. However, if we compare him to some of the guys we have coming up in future episodes, I think he's stronger than them, some of which are falling in these categories down here. So, now getting into his overall stats, for which he has both a few strengths and weaknesses. His first strength, as we've already talked about, is his premium face, which is just barely, it's around this sort of range. He's also got a premium pheno, so like I discussed with Clav in the last video, this is the most in-demand pheno. This is what girls want the most. Doesn't matter if you're in Northern Europe or most parts of America, this is the type of pheno, the Anglo-Saxon pheno that they're going for, with the light skin and the dark hair. Maybe in Southern Europe they prefer someone with a bit more of a tan who's got a darker complexion. But for most of the Northern European world and Western world, like America, they are going for these Anglo-Saxon guys. Even just look at the movie industry. Guys like Henry Cavill, guys like Robert Pattinson, they all have this Anglo-Saxon, light skin, dark hair combination. That's because it is the most in demand and the most sought after. Next, he's also got premium height. Don't sleep on this. This is very important. This guy is 6'5". A lot of girls are gonna go for him just because of his height. If you're 6'5", then this is a premium height. You're in the top 2% or maybe even 1% of heights of all guys. And it's like a pedestal. It's like your face is on show for everyone, and it's especially noticeable in clubs, and it particularly increases your social acceptance. And when we get to the types of girls that he can get later in the video, you'll see why his height and his pheno and face combination will make him a very strong candidate for being able to attract a certain type of women. Now getting into his weaknesses, and there is one major flaw that I notice he has, and that is that his mogging features are very, very marginal. Honestly, this is so underlooked in the BP community, because what I've noticed about people in the BP space is that they overrate on things such as face and height, which, don't get me wrong, are extremely important, but they always end up overlooking the mogging features. So, what mogging features does FaceIQ have that are marginal? Well, there's two things. Number one, he's got sub-marginal muscle. Now, if you look at this video of him and this photo, if you don't think this is a problem, and if you don't think that girls are gonna reject him or have a lower level of primal for him based on this level of muscle, then you're deluded. You've just spent way too much time in BP circles saying, oh, it's all about face, bro. Oh, it's all about height, bro. But I promise you, I know firsthand that girls don't like this physique. This is way too skinny. It's probably not even marginal. It's submarginal, to be honest. And it's really going to hurt the amount of primal that he has from women. And how do I know this is true? Well, I've went outside and I've looked at some couples. I've got the exposure. If you think that his lack of muscle isn't an issue, then you have just spent too much time indoors watching TikTok videos, watching a bunch of BP theories with ratios and all of this stuff, telling you what other men from the internet think is attractive, what other basement dwellers think of attractive, instead of going out into the real world. And I promise you, I know, without even having met this guy or seen the exposures that he's had with particular girls, that there will have been a lot of girls along the line, a certain type of girl who has rejected him because his frame is too bad. He has not got enough muscle. He is going to get rejections because he's not moggy enough. He's not able to generate the level of primal that a lot of girls want. But that doesn't mean he's all bad, because as I alluded to, his social acceptance is very high. And just to give a really concrete couple of examples of what the difference between primal and social acceptance is, here's an example of a guy who would have low primal but high social acceptance. And here is a guy who's got very high primal and low social acceptance. Now, why does this guy have social acceptance but not primal? Well, it's because social acceptance mainly has to do with being tall enough, having the pheno that's not going to raise any eyebrows from parents, and having a good enough face, and being a similar age, and having nice hair. Meanwhile, having primal is mainly about looking like you can do physical things. Being able to give off the energy that if things make it to the bedroom, the bed might break after all is said and done. So basically, this guy is low primal and high social acceptance, which can be a good thing. He gives off the vibe that if he asks a girl out, then it's going to be like, hey, like, you know, we're going to go spend some time at the beach and I'm not going to make any moves to you. We're just going to have a nice time and have some fun conversations, and I hope your parents are really going to like me and your friends aren't going to complain. It's going to be that kind of energy, which, you know, can get you a relationship with a girl, but it's just not going to be a primal relationship. It's more of this gesturing type where the girl is going for you just because you're a safe option and she's not going to get any complaints from her parents or friends. Meanwhile, could you imagine if there's a 19-year-old girl who tells her parents, this is my new boyfriend? You know that all hell will break loose if her parents are a certain type who are going to get angry if they saw this type of dude, because they know that this guy means business. So there is a difference between these two guys, and if we're talking about FaceIQ, he definitely falls into this category more, which is the lower primal but higher social acceptance. And to say one more point on this, generally speaking, if you want to get DGs, you would be better off going for this sort of vibe. I've noticed that the high primal, low social acceptance guys do way better with DGs because they care a lot more about the guy being hyper masculine and they don't really care about social acceptance as much. Whereas UGs, they put a much greater emphasis on social acceptance. Why? Well, because what I've noticed is that UGs tend to come from households where there's two parents, and when there's two parents that are still together, there's two extra barriers to entry. There's two extra people to make happy who might have a problem if they see their 19-year-old daughter going out with some scary-looking man in his 30s and doesn't have the most friendly vibe, to say the least. Whereas DGs, generally speaking, I'm making a generalization here, more often than not, come from a single parent household, which is one less barrier to entry. And again, another generalization, a lot of single parents haven't had the best relationships in their past themselves, which is why he or she is a single parent. Because if the parent has had a bad time with relationships, she's hardly going to be as protective and judgmental with regard to her daughter making a good choice for her partner and also having a stable and strong relationship. So I've noticed DGs tend to care less about social acceptance. They go for more these types of guys, which is a focus on primality, and it's more the hyper-masculine Giga Chad types. However, at the end of the day, you don't always have to be in one box, because the most ideal situation is when you've got both high social acceptance and high primal. And this is why I think that this guy, he's a rugby player, he's called Tommy Freeman, is potentially the highest SMV guy I can think of as a whole package, because everything is premium for him. He's got premium height, he's got premium face, he's got premium physique. Even the pheno is premium. What does all of this premium get you? Well, it gets you premium woman. This is why when it comes to dating value, it's not just a matter of having premium face, which is what a lot of BP guys would talk about. It's about also having premium height, premium mogging features, premium physique, premium pheno, the one that's most in demand and the most sought after, premium social acceptance, premium clout, premium everything. If you have premium everything, then you're always going to end up with premium. However, getting back to FaceIQ, when he's got just barely a premium face and he's got premium height, but his mogging features are very, very marginal, if not sub-marginal, then this is going to be a massive cost to him. And a lot of girls are going to be rejecting him because of this alone, or even if they do end up with him, it's going to be low primal, just because he has this sub-marginal muscle. And similarly, he also has marginal facial masculinity. He doesn't have that manly looking, aggressive face, which is going to be able to generate the primal from the women. And this is partially because of a couple of his flaws, like the rounded cheeks and the thin neck. And again, it's a problem. It reduces how strong his mogging features are. And just for anyone that's unclear, I want to make one point absolutely crystal clear, which is that HM, hypermasculine, always mogs PB, pretty boys, at the same level of facial attractiveness, that is. And what's my evidence of this? Well, take a look at this guy. If you ask a lot of BP basement dwellers how attractive this guy is facially, they would probably tell you, oh, he's in the sub-marginal range, or marginal at best. You'd hear 4s, you'd hear 5s, you'd even hear 3s. You'd never hear 6s or 7s. However, when we look at who he's with, she's clearly better than him. She's at least a 5. Some are even going to say 6. Some are even going to say 7. So there's no question about it. This girl mogs him in terms of facial attractiveness. So how is this a couple? How does this conform with the BP idea that girls always want to date up in terms of attractiveness? Well, it's because look at this guy. This guy has mogging features. Mogging features always has value in itself. Look at the size of him. He's huge. I think he's 6 foot tall, which is 182 centimeters, and 210 pounds, which I think is 90 kg. This guy's physique mogs FaceIQs into oblivion. This guy has more primal than FaceIQ, especially for girls that really value masculinity. And this highlights how having these mogging features, having a mogger frame, having mogger muscle can increase your chances, even if you have marginal to sub-marginal facial attractiveness, which is why this couple makes sense to me. I've just seen too many couples in the real world where they've been like this. In fact, as a general statement, when I've been out in the real world and I've looked at real world couples, which I've done so much of, I've probably done it more than anyone in the whole world, looking at couples, observing which guys they go for. In the rare cases where the girl has a higher score, higher attractiveness of her face compared to the guy is always HM at the very least. He's always got these mogging features to compensate for it. Bottom line, this girl would not go for him if he was the same face but on a Twigs frame with a worse height and worse muscle. It's just not going to happen. She's going with him because even though his face isn't the best, he's got the frame of a mogger, he's got the height of a mogger, he looks like a real man, not a little boy. Girls like this, they don't want a little boy. So now, going back to FaceIQ, this is why I have put this marginal mogging features as his overall weakness. And lastly, he's also got a marginal eye area, which we've already spoken about. So, overall, what level is he? Overall, I surprisingly, in spite of all what I've said, I still think that this guy is premium. However, the lowest possible level of premium that there is. So he's like right just here. And I think that's mainly because of the pheno and height. Like, you take the pheno away and you take the height away and you keep the face and the marginal mogging features the same, then this guy honestly drops to down here in terms of primality. He is being carried mainly by his above average face card, good pheno, and premium height. And he's being brought down by these lackluster mogging features. And I'm going to straight up say, if he fixed this, then he would be solidly up here. But this, honestly, if you don't think this is a big problem, then you've not had enough exposure. And you've definitely not looked at as many real-world couples like I have to see which guys are really doing well. So finally, given this overall score of being the lowest possible premium, what type of girls can he get? Well, I think that he can get upper marginal UGs, which are these types of girls. I don't think he's going to get DGs. He just doesn't have the primal or the mogging features that DGs will want, but he can definitely get these UGs. When I look at FaceIQ, these are the types of girls that I see him being with, where they value his social acceptance, they value his above average looks, and they're not going to have any complaints from her parents or friends. He just looks like a safe option for these types of girls. I don't think he can get premium UGs, however, I'm welcomed to being proven otherwise. So if he's with someone now, I reckon it would be this type of girl, a classic UG. Anyway, that's all for my analysis of FaceIQ for today, and if you want to get your own face rated in a similar way, alongside Looksmaxxing advice, then you can check out my website, which you'll get a full report tailored to your own looks and current template. There's been 30,000 of these sold, so it's been extremely popular. It's basically been a fifth of my subscribers have bought this product. And the pricing structure is very, very affordable. It's been the same as it's always been, and there's 3 different packages available with plenty of value in there. So if you're interested in this, it will be the first link in the description, and I'll see you over there.